Okay, so like I said, my camera ran out of time, so this is going to be a part 2 video. I'm going to continue on reading and do some exploring and sharing just about my personal experiences and understandings of a lot of the information and just the heart. Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit just before I left off on the first one and see where it goes. Okay, so there are 3 particular life principles that help to align the human instrument with the sovereign integral perspective. They are universe relationship through gratitude, observance of source in all things, nurturance of life. When the individual applies these principles, their life experience reveals a deeper meaning to its apparent random events, both in universal and personal contexts. I'm going to repeat this one. When the individual applies these principles, that of universe relationship through gratitude, observance of source in all things, and nurturance of life, their life experiences reveal a deeper meaning to its apparent random events, both in the universal and personal context. So, universal relationship through gratitude. This is the principle that the universe of wholeness represents a collective intelligence that can be personalized as a single universal entity. Thus, in this model of inference, there are only 2 entities in the entire cosmos: the individual entity and the universal entity. So you and the universe. You and your reality. Me and my reality. Inasmuch as the individual soul carrier is impressionable and constantly changing to adapt to new information, so is the universal entity, which is a dynamic and living template of potential energies and experiences that are coherent and as knowable as a friend's personality and behavior. The universal entity is responsive to the individual and their perceptions and expressions. It is like a composite omni-personality that is imbued with source intelligence and responds to perceptions of the individual like a pool of water mirrors the image that overshadows it. Everyone in a human instrument is indeed, at his or her innermost core, a sovereign entity that can transform the human instrument into an instrument of the sovereign integral. However, this transformation is dependent on whether the individual chooses to project an image of a sovereign integral upon the mirror of the universal entity, or project a lesser image that is a distortion of its true state of being. The principle of universal relationship through gratitude is primarily concerned with consciously designing one's self-image through an appreciation of the universal entity's supportive mirror. In other words, the universal entity is a partner in shaping reality's expression in one's life. Reality is an internal process of creation that is utterly free of external controls and conditions if the individual projects a sovereign image upon the mirror of the universal entity. This process is an interchange. Actually, I'm going to elaborate on this part a little bit. Okay, and repeat it. So, reality is an internal process of creation that is utterly free of external controls and conditions if the individual projects a sovereign image upon the mirror of the universal entity. So just to say, if you see yourself aligned with the universe, and the universe is you, and you see that mirror, you look at that mirror and you see that every reaction and circumstance and person and experience that you bring into your life is a mirror for you. So that takes us outside of the dramas of just discord and disagreement and frustration and anger and projection and blame and hate and love in an attaining sort of manner, and even on a global scale. So like, because of all the separation and the lack of coherence of humanity, just from being in separation and from having the good and the bad and the the war on power and control, or whatever it is, we see that within us there's a war, and there's violence, there's chaos, there's scattered energy and fear. Boiling down to the bottom of it, there's fear. And so we have all these world events, these terrorists, these tragedies, these horrible things happening, the war that just never ends, the battle of constantly fighting for something, and fighting so much that we forget what we're fighting for, really. We just have to pick a side, root for something, or have faith in some small or large aspect of the war that's going on in order to feed it and continue on with it. But what we don't see is that that war is within us. And is also there in a natural aspect of the process of realizing that that war is within us, realizing that us as a collective consciousness have created this. Among other things that I'll maybe get into later, but a lot of it is that we are so embedded in separation. We are so limited in our views of ourselves and of our reality and of our ability to create and control. Not powerfully, like not in a manipulative or logical kind of manner, but in a united, heart-based, almost just being the observer sort of manner. And seeing that is difficult because we're in that control, and we're sort of just born directly into that construct in the collective unconscious. That it's hard to remember when everything in our life, in our culture, tells us to forget. So, this process is an interchange of supportive energy from the individual to the universal entity, and this energy is best applied through an appreciation of how perfect and exacting the interchange occurs in every moment of life. If the individual is aware, or at least interested in having an awareness, of how perfect the universal entity supports the individual sovereign reality, there's a powerful and natural sense of gratitude that flows from the individual to the universal entity. It is this wellspring of gratitude that opens the channel of support from the universal entity to the individual and establishes a collaboration of purpose to transform the human instrument into an expression of the sovereign integral. I think I'm going to stop reading there. It's a lot of information and a lot of feeling. Hopefully, I don't know. But I think one thing that brought me into this was somehow I've been always a really deep person, really. Very, very connected to feeling, very open-hearted my whole entire life, very vulnerable and very sensitive. And I didn't know how to protect that, so what happened was life brought me into a very heightened, kind of almost enlightened sort of awareness, but very not ready, very dark in that polarity of judgment and discord and misunderstanding and projection and all of that. And it's been part of my process, but a lot of it was being very focused on sort of a subconscious aspect of interaction, and not consciously being aware of this, but seeing it and seeing how everyone really was a mirror, and how this mirror fed off of my insecurities. This mirror fed directly off of all the things that I feared. And I would constantly, one person after another, witness these things that I feared the most in them. And it just wouldn't go away. And for a long time I started to think, oh, there must be something really wrong with me, or I must be really that terrible of a person, and that I see that, and everybody sees that, and it's just like this exchange that's just very chaotic and not in harmony and not in a coherent heart space. So I wasn't grateful. I was judgmental and critical and scared, and very, very, very scared. Very afraid of myself, afraid of my perception, afraid of what I was seeing. And feeling that fear was very difficult for me as a person, in terms of understanding who I was, and trusting expression and trusting my voice, and feeling like able to love myself and able to align with who I want to be. And it's still a process, you know. It takes time, and I'm still working out of that very, very deep and dark place. But I appreciate it endlessly for what I learned, for how I grew, and for where it's taken this understanding. And I don't feel like I've moved out of it. I feel like, I don't know, maybe transmute is the right word, or what I've done is I've stepped back and I've taken this inward, not just externally, but inward. They're the same, of course, but consciously applied things like living from my heart and sending myself love and understanding and seeing the whole of everything that I had experienced and hated, and you know, it was like the worst, my biggest nightmare that I created, and taking responsibility for that, owning that, and not victimizing myself, not feeling like a terrible person because I allowed all of that negativity or whatever to take over my my consciousness, but seeing what it is, seeing how it's just so perfectly part of the whole of experience, so perfectly part of the duality that we live in. Moving into the gratitude factor, moving more and more and more into the gratitude factor is I guess the way to put it is taking me out of self-identity, an ego, like you call it the ego identity, the mind, into a place that is very still and very calm and serene and patient, and learning how to be unafraid as I enter into it. And I guess the dialogue of everything that I've just read to you can be irrelevant, really. It's in feeling. If there's a resonance of some sort in feeling, if something awakens something, if a part of what I've said awakens something within you, feel that truth, whatever it comes to in your reality. Feel it. And envision it. Take it somewhere. Embody it. Listen to yourself and listen to the deepest part of yourself. Silence.